Today what we're going to be doing is we are going to start to modify that cube, that red cube that you made again. So the last time we modified it by changing the yellow cube into red and added 2 extrusions to the side. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be centering those 2 extrusions on our red cube, and then we're going to be adding another sketch in which we're going to then modify or extrude it, but a different way. So let's get started. You will see we want to make sure that we center our cylinder extrusion that's on our front view of our cube. We need to center the square extrusion on the right view of our cube. And then we are going to need to create a centered hole in the top view. Now I'm going to tell you 2 different ways in which you are able to create a hole through the top part of our cube. All right, I do want to make sure that we understand we have to open up our cube from the last time. So we want to make sure that we understand how to access that file. If you remember, you need to go to the Open File icon or the Open icon on Autodesk Inventor, and you'll need to make sure you open up your red cube. Once it's open, you'll see that I have mine here. What we're going to do is we're going to talk a lot about the model tree today. So remember, the model tree is on the side, and you'll see that there's these little plus buttons. Yours probably looks like this. What we're going to do is we're going to open up that little plus button on the side next to our extrusion descriptions so that we can see the sketches that are attached. And you'll notice if I hover over those extrusions, you'll see which part of my sketch I was actually extruding. And so that helps us kind of stay organized a little bit, especially when we have lots of different things that we're going to be adjusting to our models. So that's kind of a nice feature. So let's get started. So I want you to go down to where it says the sketch of that extrusion, and we're going to right click and then select Edit Sketch. So here we have our circle, and you'll see that my circle is not quite centered. And so I want to make sure that you're able to show me that you can center it. And so we're going to work on what's called the dimension factor again, or that dimension tool, and we're going to constrain it. And so what we're going to do, I'm going to select it right now, and then I'm going to select the center of my circle, and I'm going to select one of the sides. Basically what I'm doing is I'm trying to make sure that the space between my center of my circle and the edge of my square or my side of my cube is exactly the way I want it. And I know that I want it to be in the center, and my cube is 3 inches across, so that means my center of my circle needs to be at 1.5. So I'm going to go ahead and type it in and enter. And then I need to make sure that I do that from the top and the bottom as well. So I'm going to select my center of my circle and the top of my square or my cube. And again, I need to make sure it's 1.5 inches away from one another. And as I do that, then I'm going to finish my sketch. And there I have centered my cylinder extrusion. We're going to do the same thing for our square extrusion. So again, go over to your model tree. You're going to hover over the extrusion that we want to adjust, or we want to make sure that it's centered, excuse me. And I'm going to go down to where it says the sketch that's associated with that extrusion, and I'm going to right click and I'm going to edit the sketch. So with this, we want to make sure that, again, it's centered. So we have to do a little bit of math and kind of think. So I'm going to select the dimension tool up at the top in the ribbon, and then I'm going to select the side of my square on my sketch and the side of my cube. So I selected the top, and I'm going to tell it to be 0.75. Oops, delete it, and be 0.75. Now I need to do the same thing on the side. So again, make sure my dimension tool is chosen. I'm going to select a side of my square that I haven't selected already, and I'm going to select the edge and drag either up or down. Whoops. Try that again. Edge, and then the side, and I'm going to scroll up or drag up, and you'll see it's 0.612, so definitely not in the center. So I'm going to change my dimension, and there I have it. It is perfectly centered. I've constrained it so it's right where I want it to be. I'm going to finish my sketch, and it made the adjustment. So there we've already centered 2 of our extrusions. And all it takes is to constrain the dimensions from one edge to the part that we're trying to adjust. Task number 3, we are to create a hole on the top of our cube and have it go all the way through. Now there's 2 different ways that we're going to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create my circle, and I'm going to show you how we extrude not out but into our shape. So let's get started with that. I'm going to go over to my view cube, and I'm going to select the top face of my cube because that's where my hole is supposed to be. And I'm going to start my 2D sketch and then select my top view. I'm going to center it just because I like to have it right in front of me. And then I'm going to create a circle on that side of the square or cube. So left click and drag, and I'm going to type in 1.5, and there I have my circle. But we want to make sure it's centered, so I'm going to select my dimension tool, select the center of my circle, and the top of my cube. And you'll notice it's not quite centered, so I'm going to type into my dimension, and then I need to do the same thing on the other side. So the center of my circle with the edge of my cube, and I'm going to drag it up, and 1.5. Now I have my circle that is centered, and it has the right dimension of the circle as well. So I'm going to finish my sketch. Now what I'm going to do, as you can see, it's not quite finished. I need to go ahead and I need to extrude it. And I need to make sure that it goes in because it's supposed to be the hole going all the way through. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select extrude. And what I'm going to tell it is I'm going to tell it that needs to be 3 inches, because remember our cube is 3 inches, so we need to make sure that it extrudes 3 inches. So I'm going to type in 3, and I'm going to select the surface that I want to be extruded, which is our circle. So you'll notice I'm hovering over my circle, and it kind of shades it in to let me know I'm on the right surface or the right shape, and I'm going to select it. But notice it extruded out, and I don't want it to extrude out. So right here, right underneath where I typed my 3, you'll see that I actually can change the direction. So if I select direction 2, it actually went the opposite way. It actually went in or through. Now there's another way that we could do that. So instead, you could also select cut and make sure it goes the right direction. So you can do either way. So now if I go ahead and select my home, and so I have my top, my front, and my right face the way I would need it. Let's double check that it goes all the way through. Perfect. And so here's the second way that you can go ahead and do this. So I'm going to create my 2D sketch on the top, and I'm going to center it. This time I'm going to choose a point. And so you'll notice up here there's a point, and I'm going to create a point. It's like if we were to go ahead and drill a hole. I'm going to mark the point on my actual surface that I want the hole to go through. So I'm going to select it, and of course I want to make sure it's centered, so I'm going to choose the dimension tool, select the point, and select the edge, and then make sure it's 1.5 by 1.5. And then I'm going to finish my sketch. So I've created a point. So imagine that you have this center, this surface. You've drawn a hole on the surface, and now, or a dot on the surface, and now you're going to drill a hole through it. So you'll notice I'm going to select this, what's called Modify tools. So I'm going to select hole. And on this pop-up, it lets you determine various things that you're going to do. So right now I want it to go all the way through. I'm going to then select the diameter of the hole, and I said I want the hole to be 1.5 inches. And then I pressed enter. And there you go. So we now have learned 2 different ways to go ahead and make a hole through our cube. You can either use a circle and then extrude in, or you can use a point, create a point on the surface, and then use the whole modifying function or tool to be able to create that for you. That is it. We have our task completed for today. Make sure again that you save your cube. I'll see you in class.